Journaling seems to be very prevalent right now. You hear about it on the news, you read articles about it, about why you should journal, or the benefits of journaling and how it can help you in terms of self-improvement or mental health or wellness. You walk through your local bookstore and there's an entire section of books or of different styles of journals dedicated to the idea of journaling or the forms of journaling that you can take on. That's great. Journaling becoming mainstream again or having a renaissance moment, depending on how you look at it, I think is a very, very good thing. That being said, there's a lot of different options for what kind of journaling styles you can take on out there, or journaling forms. Today I'm going to walk you through 4 of my favorite journaling styles and why they work for me. And maybe they'll be of benefit to you, or at the very least, might be something of interest. Why journal? As I mentioned, there are numerous articles out there on Google about the reasons you should journal, the benefits of journaling. For me, I have a few particular reasons. One of them right off the bat is mental health, which is another topic that's really, really prevalent right now, and I think that's fantastic. Emotional well-being is another way of phrasing that I tend to use, and I find that journaling is another tool in my mental health toolkit to really help me manage anxiety, stress, to help me focus in on positive emotional well-being. And journaling really helps me to surround that narrative or encapsulate that narrative and guide me in my mental health in a place that's really, really positive for that. Another reason for journaling for me is the reflective capacity. That self-reflection, self-awareness, better understanding who I am at a point in time, better understanding what is taking up my mental capacity in terms of my goals or things that might be distracting me at my current juncture in life. The third reason and benefit from journaling for me is that idea of creativity. I find in my journals I explore all sorts of ideas, most things that'll never come to fruition, but having a creative space, an outlet to be able to do that. And I find a blank notebook for me, or a blank page in a notebook for me, really allows me to express a lot of those creative ideas or those creative thoughts in terms of what I might be willing to explore, what I want to try, some of the crazy harebrained ideas, and some of the more focused strategies around what I'm trying to do in my life at that given point in time. Some of the other reasons include just the ability to have better memory. I find that writing things down really increases my memory capacity, and just the ability to pay attention. Journaling can be a very analog activity, and when I sit down and journal, I find that my entire attention is focused in on journaling, which really helps in other aspects of my life, that ability to pay attention. And of course, goal setting. Journaling really helps me to map out my visions, my goals, at that particular point in my life and what I'm trying to achieve, what I'm trying to stray away from, and how I'm shifting that narrative around what my life will look like on a day-to-day basis. The last thing I think is really important for me is just it's a log of who I was at a particular point in time. Not that I'm expecting my personal journals to become a all-important best-selling memoir or anything like that. But for me to go back and look at who I was and where I am today and really see the growth or areas of change that I need to induce. So I find journaling has a lot of benefits, and I've only covered a few that are pertinent to me. That ability to have that reflective capacity, that ability to pay attention, better memory, mental health. I think these are all really, really good things that have come from journaling and have been really, really helpful. What do you need for journaling? What are the tools that you need to journal? There's 2 categories in my mind of the types of tools that you could use to journal. There are analog tools, and then there are digital tools. Digital tools being a fairly recent thing in the idea of keeping a diary or keeping a journal. So with perspective, that ability in the digital world to type in your journal into a digital format, and especially on phones or mobile phones these days, they have apps for journaling. I believe Apple is about to release a new journaling app, or they might have already. I tend to more focus on analog tools, and that's been always something that I've gravitated to, and that's a lot of what I discuss on this channel here. So notebooks and pens, papers, and it doesn't have to be anything fancy. I remember my first notebook being a $4 or $5 notebook from a dollar store, and a Bic pen or a ballpoint pen that was 50 cents. And I used that for a good couple of years of journaling. And eventually I got into better pens, better pencils, and what I tend to use a lot now personally is really good quality paper and fountain pens, or paper that can handle fountain pens. Those are my tools, my writing instruments. I love fountain pens, but you don't need to have a fountain pen in order to journal. I think that's great if you want to gravitate towards that. I think it really comes down to just, in the analog side of things, piece of paper, notebook would be ideal just to keep a compendium of all those papers together, and a writing instrument, so a pencil or a pen. My first journaling style is microjournaling. And I really like this because it's exactly what it sounds like. The idea behind microjournaling is capturing small snippets, micro snippets if you want, of your thoughts, of something that's of interest to you, something that comes to you, whether you're copying a passage or a quote or a poem from a book. But whatever it is, you're capturing that in small doses. Sometimes it's a quick sketch for me, if that happens to be the case. And what that gives me is the ability to have quite a bit of journaling time throughout the day. If I were to average it out for myself, I would be spending anywhere between 1 to 3 hours of journaling time in the format or in the style of microjournaling throughout the day. And that sounds like a lot, but if you span it across the entirety of a day, it's literally 10, 15 seconds here or there that I just tend to jot down notes, sometimes a minute, sometimes 5 minutes. But I'm not sitting at my desk for an hour or two and journaling for a long period of time. And what I really like about microjournaling is at the end of the day, it gives me 1 or 2 pages of all these little sentences, 1 or 2 lines, short paragraphs, little quotes, little sketches, and gives me a visual snapshot of the course of my day. And I'm not having to sit there at the end of the night and try and map that out over a period of time. So I really like the idea of microjournaling. It's anywhere, it's anytime, it's on you, and you build the habit of journaling. If you're new to journaling and you're struggling with building a habit of journaling, microjournaling, for me, this is what I started out with, was really, really helpful in that way. I'd always keep a pen and paper on me, and I would just write things down, period, or over the course of the last 18 years of journaling. I have found microjournaling to be really, really helpful in keeping a daily habit of journaling. I do all my microjournaling in my traveler's notebook. I love this guy. There's a blank notebook in here, a blank page notebook, I should say. And what I'll do is I'll keep my traveler's notebook on me, and throughout the course of the day, as I mentioned, if anything comes to me, I'll open up the notebook, write it down, and close it. I won't even reflect on it in that moment. If I've got time, I might, but I tend to just write things down over and over again, not spend too much time harboring on what I just wrote down. Should I elaborate on it? And I really like that ability to come back at the end of the day and go, oh yeah, I see what I was trying to capture in that note to myself. My second favorite journaling style is gratitude journaling. It's exactly what it sounds like. It's writing things down that you're really grateful for. For me, what I tend to do is on a daily basis, especially in the mornings, and it's always in the mornings for me, and shortly after I wake up or after I meditate, I will sit down and write on a daily page in my A5 notebook things that I'm grateful for. And I find that really helps me frame all things in a positive state of mind, especially if I'm going through a difficult challenge or period at that point in my life. Doing the gratitude journaling really helps me to frame it from more of a positive mindset. So I'll write things down that are pretty repetitive sometimes in terms of gratitude and blessings. G and B is what I tend to use. That may include just my wife and kids on a daily basis, my Stationery at 4 channel. Grateful that you're all watching and paying attention to this. But really just the idea of, what am I grateful for? What do I have gratitude towards? And it can easily span an entire page for me sometimes, just because I'm so grateful. And other days it can be 1 or 2 things, but just that ability to write even one thing down that I'm grateful for really helps, both in that reflective capacity, that mental health, that emotional well-being, and I find that really fosters a strong positive mindset for me. My third favorite journaling style is long form journaling. This is the idea of writing for a longer period of time. I use an A5 notebook for my long form journaling. I find that's a really nice format for me. And what I'll do is I'll do this on a daily basis. Anywhere, I guess, between 10 to 20 minutes for me is what I would consider long form journaling from a time perspective, but it's certainly more from the perspective of, unlike micro journaling or gratitude journaling where it's a few lines or one page at most, long form journaling for me is 2 or 3 pages, and I'll give myself anywhere between 20 minutes to half an hour sometimes. If I'm trying to be really fast with long form journaling, I can do it within 10 minutes. Long form journaling is really a daily capture of a lot more of a narrative around my life. And I use some prompts that are really helpful for me. And if you're struggling with what journaling prompts to use, you can go onto Google. But if you're interested in what I use, I've got a link down to my favorite prompts in the description area below. So this is the area where I will ask myself questions, things like, how do you feel? Which is a pretty open-ended prompt, I suppose. And I might get more specific on certain days with things like, what changes could I implement based on how my day went? What do I want to achieve today? What is the most important thing I want to achieve today? What is the most important thing in life? So some of this more exploratory aspect around what my mind state is, what are some of the thoughts rattling around, I'll put in sketches sometimes. Sometimes it really helps to visualize it as opposed to trying to write it down. I'll use stickers. I'm trying to capture memories sometimes, so I'll write a lot about a particular memory that really seems to be taking up a lot of that space mentally, so I'll try and get that down in my long form journal. But really that's the idea, is just freedom, creativity, exploration, capturing, but over a longer period of space in terms of the notebook and in terms of time as well. I really like long form journaling because it allows me to focus in on things that I might not be aware of. While micro journaling might give me an insight into, oh, go explore this, or, oh, that's interesting, that's one little aspect. Long form journaling for me really gives me that ability to just have a blank page and perhaps even use stream of consciousness where I'm just writing things down, and over a couple of pages I can clearly see what I'm trying to decipher or what I'm trying to really understand. And sometimes it'll click and sometimes it's a bunch of gibberish, but it can be fun to also read. And the other benefit of long form journaling is it's a little bit of a longer compendium in terms of that log of who you were at a certain point of time in your life. When do I long form journal? I typically do it in the mornings, especially with my morning routine, which gives me a little bit more time to actually dedicate at my desk and flesh things out. And I also tend to do it at the night if I've got the ability of having 10-15 minutes to sit down at the end of the day and just kind of really reflect on how my day went, what can I change. So I tend to do both. What I don't do is long form journal throughout the day or in the middle of the day. I just don't have the time for it or the mental capacity to sit down and focus for a longer period of time on that activity, because there's a lot in my life, at least, that's going on, which is where the micro journaling really helps. I can still journal, as I mentioned, but not have to dedicate too much time to it. My fourth and final favorite journaling style is my 5-year diary. What I really like about this, especially in the Midori format, is it gives me only a few lines on a daily basis to write something down. And I tend to use my 5-year diary either in the nighttime, right at the end of my day, or for a few moments or at the start of my day when I'm sitting down at my desk to journal if I haven't captured it in the nighttime. It allows me to just pick some highlights of my day that I really want to remember and write down. While the micro journaling, the gratitude journaling, and the long form journaling has a lot more of a narrative around all the things that could be happening to me on a daily basis, the 5-year journal forces me to write only a few key things down. If I were to ever look back on a certain year, what I really like to do, for example, is take a look at a certain day in my 5-year diary and go, wow, okay, that is what was important to me on that particular day. And sometimes it's absolutely hilarious. Sometimes it was this amazing burger and French fries that I had, and that was the only highlight of my particular day. And other times it could be a whole schlockload of things that were really funny or somewhat harrowing, but it gives me that ability to condense and really foster that reflective capacity of what is important to me to be able to, or to be wanting to write. There you have it, my 4 favorite journaling styles: microjournaling, gratitude journaling, long-form journaling, and my 5-year journal or diary. Some tips for journaling if you're new or if you're a experienced journaler. Some of my tips, at least, that have been helpful to me. If there's one thing you can do for building a journaling habit if you're new to it or if you're trying to reinvigorate it, is to just show up. In any style of journaling you pick, whether it's the 4 that I really like or whatever you're doing for whatever style of journaling you're doing, it's just to show up. If you're setting yourself aside some time, and if it's a period of time, for example, that you're telling yourself that you're going to journal for 20 minutes every morning, some days you might not feel like it, but just to show up and even spend a minute writing something down. This is very much in line with that amazing book, Atomic Habits, and I highly recommend it. Other tips for me is having some journal prompts ready. As I mentioned, I've got my favorite in a file down below in the description there. Feel free to use them. These are not ones that I've come up with myself. These are just amalgamated over a period of time where I found certain prompts were a lot more useful to me. Google is your best friend when it comes to journal prompts. There are literally thousands out there. Find what works for you and bring it back into some go-tos for journal prompts that might be really beneficial for you. My last tip is that journaling is really just a tool in a toolkit. A lot of people can get hung up on the idea of it's all about the journaling itself. And really, I tend to view the journaling as a tool. This is something that I'm using as a medium to help me really develop that reflective capacity to understand what is going on for myself. So I'd approach journaling from that perspective, not so much as an obligation, but more so as a tool to better understand yourself, things that are going on, to map out your goals, your vision, your future. If you approach it more so from this is a hobby or a thing that I must develop because it's supposed to be good for me, then perhaps it might not last in the long run. And I've certainly gone through periods of that in my life where I've approached it of this is the thing that I'm known for. I'm the journaling guy, but it's more useful when it's set with intention of why I am journaling. So understand your why and use that as a basis to develop your new journaling habit or reinvigorate your journaling habit or sustain what you already have going on. That's always been really helpful for me. Don't be afraid to come back to your why with journaling, to change up your styles. Like I said, these are 4 of my favorites that I use, but I have explored quite a lot of different journaling styles, everything from bullet journaling to specific ideas around certain journals, like a food journal and things like that. And I find these 4 have been really, really helpful to me to hone it down to and what works for me today. And who knows, in 2 or 3 years, I might change it all up. I'm curious about you though. What are your favorite journaling styles? What do you tend to use? Let me know in the comments section below. If you found this video helpful, please consider clicking on the like and subscribe buttons below. Take care, have a wonderful day, and happy journaling.